Good evening and welcome. I'm Roger Hertog, chairman of the New York Historical Society, and I'm pleased to welcome you here this evening. I think we're about to have a truly interesting evening and a most revealing kind of program with an author who's put a lot of time into a particular area of study. In case you haven't noticed, there's a cottage industry out there, populated by diplomats, journalists, who write about their experiences in the Middle East. This has been going on for 30 or 40 years. I think it's fair to say that most of those histories, most of those memoirs, will be little noted nor long remembered. But not all. Tested by Zion, the Bush administration and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, authored by Elliott Abrams, our guest this evening, is sure to go down as the definitive history of this period. Mr. Abrams is educated at Harvard College, Harvard Law School, London School of Economics, and served for 8 years during the Reagan administration as Assistant Secretary of State, and 8 years in the Bush administration as the White House Deputy Advisor to the President and Deputy National Security Advisor. Elliott's book, Tested by Zion, is worth reading, and I should note, if you want to read it, it's worth buying, for two important reasons. First, this is a presidential advisor at the highest level with access to all of the players involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and there are a lot. The book is filled with answers about really interesting questions that we all have thought about if we've been interested in this region, thinking about Egypt, Israel, the Palestinians, Syrians. The questions are manyfold, but many of the answers that you'll receive, or you'll be able to get a better understanding of it, was how was it that George W. Bush from Texas came to the White House with so little experience in the Middle East, became so intensely involved with Israel, and committed to the Jewish state? How did it happen? How and why did George W. Bush's choice for Secretary of State, Colin Powell, how did his views differ so sharply from the president's, almost from the very beginning? Why was it that Yasser Arafat, who had been invited to the White House so many times, in fact, I think more than any other foreign dignitary during the Clinton years, never set foot in the Bush White House? How did Bush and Sharon develop such a trusting relationship? They had really never met. Why did Condoleezza Rice's viewpoint change so abruptly between the first term and the second term of the administration? Why and how did Sharon decide it was in Israel's interest to leave Gaza? And if that isn't enough, what is the real story behind the bombing of the Syrian nuclear facility? Given what's happened since, it's truly chilling to think that absent the Israeli attack, what might have been if Syria had been a nuclear power today? The second big reason to read this book is for the uncommon light it sheds on the process of developing a foreign policy. How do all of these moving parts work together, and what are the best ways for them to work together? Just think of it. The response to any issue confronting our nation has to survive this complex gauntlet including the White House, the State Department, the Defense Department, the Justice Department, probably others, and not to mention all the subgroups in each of these establishments that can be counted on to disagree with one another. So many different worldviews embedded in our government, and so many ways to fail. In essence, this book is sort of a primer for a president and how he or she should think about organizing its foreign policy initiatives and what the role of the White House is versus the State Department and the Defense Department. We're fortunate that Elliot will be here. He is going to talk for about a half an hour, and then we'll have hopefully a robust question and answer period. And at about 7:30, we'll convene in the atrium for cocktails. And I will mention once again, you will have an opportunity there to purchase this remarkable book in our bookstore. And if you so choose, I'm sure Elliot would be happy to autograph it for you. So with that, I thank you so much for coming. And let me introduce Elliott Abrams.
Thank you very much. First, let me thank you, Roger, for that introduction, and as well for your support of the work I'm doing at the Council on Foreign Relations. There's one other person, there are a lot of people here I should mention, but I'll mention one other before I start, and that's Louis Bateman, who's the senior editor of Cambridge University Press, who got this typescript and said, yes, we're going to publish this. So I'm grateful to him. I should add, I know that there are many of you in this audience and in any audience who no longer read books on paper. And I will actually be happy to sign your Kindle if you have it with you. Why did I write this book? Roger has really given some of the explanation, or much of it. The story of Bush administration policy as it changed over 8 years, and it did change. And the story of these events from 9/11 to the death of Arafat to the Lebanon war, the fighting in Gaza, these are important events, and I thought the stories need to be told, and no one else is going to tell them. President Bush, Vice President Cheney, Secretary Rice have written their memoirs, and they don't have much of this because they're covering the entire world, and in the case of the President and Vice President, domestic politics as well. So I thought if I don't do it, no one is going to do it. And in addition, there are just too many good stories not to tell. They should not be lost to history. If you think of the personalities here, Bush, Cheney, Rice, Powell, Arafat, King of Saudi Arabia, King of Bahrain, Sharon, Olmert. These stories deserve to be told. And I wanted to try to shed some light on how decisions are made, rightly and sometimes, at least in my view, wrongly. The story covers 8 years, and let me just start with the beginning and the end before we get to the middle. January 20th, 2001. The old president gives over to the new president, and whenever that happens, they have tea in the Oval Office. And that's all they do. They have tea, and they exchange pleasantries. Very often they hate each other. In some cases, one guy beat the other. So, tea. But not January 20th, 2001. Because Bill Clinton had something he wanted to say, and he said it 10 times. Don't trust that guy, Arafat. More pungent language, actually, than that. I trusted him. I tried. Don't make the same mistake I made. You'll be sorry if you do. I tell you that story at the beginning because it is, in a way, an answer to one of the charges made. The Bush administration paid no attention to the Middle East and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict until 2008,